I'm Dr. Ronit Seter. I'm a historical musicologist who studies contemporary music, and I specialize in Israeli art music. Today, I'm honored to interview you, Professor Tzvi Avni, a celebrated Israeli composer for the last 6 decades at least, and you, Dr. Friedrich Spangemacher. We will discuss your recent biography of Avni and his music. Today, the 22nd of February 2022, you, Professor Avni, speak to us from Tel Aviv, Israel, and you, Dr. Spangemacher, are in Saarbrücken, Germany, and I speak to you from a home in the city of Fairfax, Virginia, USA. Professor Avni has been a leader of Israeli art and music already since the mid-60s. Your compositions have been performed more often than, I would say, most of your peers in Israel, Germany, Europe, and America by some of the leading choirs, orchestras, and ensembles. Beyond the prestigious Israel Prize, you received top prizes in Israel and in Germany. Your style is both contemporary, which of course meant different styles in different times, yet emotive, accessible, and captivating. Still, your pieces do carry this elusive Avni signature on them. No wonder that we now see 3 biographies about your life and music, 2 in Hebrew, and the 3rd one in German, which is your work, Dr. Spangemacher. During our last talk 2 weeks ago, we discussed with you, Dr. Spangemacher, your new book about Avni. I asked you about your 20-year-long connection with Tzvi, now your experience as a broadcaster and writer about other contemporary composers, enriched your current book about Avni, and which pieces by Avni you chose to eliminate. So today, I would like to begin with you, Professor Avni. Could you please tell us the history of your renewed connection with Germany? Well, I do know that for many decades, as a German refugee, you avoided not only Germany, but also the German language and the culture. The return to German language and culture was gradual. And now your pieces are performed in Germany, sometimes even more than in Israel. Could you please tell us about that gradual 6-decade transition?
Where should I begin? My first visit in Germany was, I think, around 1971 or 72. I was music director of the Biografie dance company, and they had on the program also music by mine, but I was also going with them on tours sometimes. And as maybe of the younger generation here, people don't know the situation in the 50s or 60s. German was still a language which you avoided because it was still so much after the Holocaust, and even people who were somehow, who came from Germany or had some connection with German culture and the language, officially it was still a kind of difficult situation. But in 1970, as I said, 70 or 70, I don't remember, the beginning of the 70s, when I came the first time to Germany, it was really, I must say, not easy situation. I had to get used to that feeling that things that happened before, they did happen, and somehow, as also the country and the government here decided, life must go on. And I was quite active in the later years. Gradually, I once in a while came to Germany. I think it was in 1980 that I had an important visit in Germany because Gary Bertini with the Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra performed in Berlin in the Philharmonic Hall. In my piece, which I wrote at that time, and which I called Program Music 1980. I think Dr. Spangemacher knows the piece quite well. And it was a premiere in Germany, of course, and it was this kind of feeling, really. I'm here in Berlin, and what happened there, we know. And that feeling, it was a kind of, for me, a kind of great achievement that I am there with an Israeli orchestra, with an Israeli conductor, and with my music performed. And in Saarland, it took a little more time. And as Dr. Spangemacher mentioned in your former discussion, we were in Germany with the family in the beginning of the 80s, I think 82 or something like this, or maybe a little bit, no, maybe a few years later. And Hannah, the late Hannah Yador, my wife, was very insisting. She wants to see the city where I was born. And this was the first visit in Saarbrücken. I don't remember
again, what
exactly
year
the
was
year.
it? Can you remind
Pardon?
us? What year was it?
I think it might have been 1982.
Oh.
I'm not sure, but it was in the 80s already.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I was surprised. As a child, I remembered Saarbrücken as a kind of industrial city. I remember the chimneys, and there was a lot of industrial activity. And as a child, that's what I remembered. And here I came to that city, which looked so casual and nice, and we met some young people, and it was really very nice to meet this new generation already. And anyway, people who had interest in of course in my music also, but in really getting to know us. And we spent a few days in Saarbrücken, and this was my first visit there. And later, I think I had also a couple of performances there. Maybe Spangemacher remembers it, knows it better than I now. I don't remember it by heart. But once in a while, I had a performance of a piece there. I think Dr. Gradenwitz introduced my music also to the Saarländer. And it became more and more often that I was coming to that city. And later, maybe we'll discuss later the things that developed from this early stage of my visits there. And it became actually a kind of second home for me in recent years, in later years. I have many friends there. I have I got you know the prize of Saarland, the Kunstpreis, and also there were very nice relations with the mayor at that time, and with a few friends which are really very close friends up to now.
Well, thank you. Wow, thank you. That's quite inspiring. Your gradual connection back to Germany, and I think that you, Dr. Spangemacher, have a major role in Avni's coming back to Saarbrücken. Could you please tell us about the story about the prize of the 1999 prize? You were involved in it.
Yes, of course. I must add to Tzvi that he is highly estimated in. He's the mayor, and all the cultural people know his name. Now, his music maybe not too much, but everyone knows who is he, and what did you wanted what?
I would like to ask a little bit about the story around the prize, because you're involved with giving to Tzvi the 1999 Zarland Prize, right?
Yeah, this prize, the prize winner is in a finding process with there's twofold finding process. The first is people from music field or in other areas from the art fields and literature fields. They propose personalities for this prize, and there's a jury. I don't know who was in the jury at that time, I proposed him, and I thought I discovered him and his music not so many years before, but I was really impressed that we have I must say the prize is given to people who are living in Saarland, in the country, who came from the Saarland, or they worked a great deal of their life in Saarland. So it has to, and he was really a born candidate. He was the right candidate, and I think the jury would say, yeah, this is the right decision that we can take. Yeah, and then we.
So at that time, it was even before Tzvi wrote his Ship of the Hours, right? So which are the pieces, if you can recall, which are the pieces that really inspired you to give him the prize? Which are the pieces that you knew at the time, if you remember?
Yes, the most important piece was, of course, the epitaph.
Oh.
And I heard it very often.
The sonata, piano sonata.
This the piano sonata, yeah. But also I heard a recording of the collage, and I think also
meditations on a drama.
Meditations on a drama, of course, yeah. Meditations on a drama. So, and this is meditations is new music. It's contemporary music. It seems when it starts, it's like avant-garde. It's music like maybe composed by Nono. Maybe the way of the style could also be composed by Penderecki, maybe Ligeti. Oh, it was in the center of the avant-garde music of that time. So he was up
you
to
wrote
date.
You wrote about the avant-garde. You wrote about Ligeti. You wrote about Nono. So you could tell and Tzvi, of course, taught in many places. He taught this kind of music. So, and he taught it to generations of composers. So elements from this music were infused in meditations on drama that he actually studied in his time in America, in the Columbus Princeton lab of electronic music. Yep. So you could tell that there are traces of, Ligeti's use of clusters and Nono's elements in music in Tzvi Avni's meditation on drama, which actually made a big impression in Israel also.
Yes, but it's more than only avant-garde in this piece. I wrote, and Tzvi told me that it was, of course, is dealing with the actual contemporary music, but also finding a new voice for his life in Israel, for his going on of his creative way. So it's more, and it's wonderful that you see someone who is in the middle of the avant-garde, and he tries to find a very personal way of writing. So this impressed me very much.
Yes, it is really impressive, because on the one hand, it uses some techniques from the avant-garde. On the other hand, this piece is, as I said before, emotive, accessible to the public, and it made some impression. Can you say a few more words, Tzvi, about your meditations?
I think it was I composed it in 1965. You mentioned New York and Columbia and electronic music, but at that time, I lived 2 years in New York, and there was, it was that at that time it was the center of the contemporary music. Everybody came there. During this time, when I was there, Stockhausen was there and presented his works, I think even twice, and Boulez, and of course, John Cage and all these people. But still, beside New York, I had great luck. I was very lucky to get a scholarship from Copland in Tanglewood for 2 months, for a whole summer. Tanglewood at that time was a kind of beehive of contemporary music. Young composers, of all kinds, very wild, sometimes very naive, sometimes very extreme. And among the teachers was Xenakis, of course, Copland, but he was the father of the whole thing. I was very much, I studied with Copland and then with Lucas Voss. I was very much impressed by Lucas. I think he was really a great composer and performer of his own music and a great thinker of music. It's not just writing more extreme things, yes, but music with contents, music which says something. But above all that, you mentioned the influence of avant-garde, which is, of course, very obvious in this piece, especially. I had also that urge to do something which connects with my earlier tendencies to kind of giving, after all, a kind of Israeli color, of something of our region. And
some sort of an Israeli stamp of,
for instance, the main
personal
motive,
stamp.
The main motive of the horn, which gives that to me, it is not only, of course, the septima opening with a septima interval is already something, daring, of course, or apt to contemporary. But to me, it was a kind of, it had some color of something Israeli and even something Jewish. And I think that I did not get away from this phase of my life, that feeling. Of course, at the beginning, it was much more obvious. Everybody was composing here Israeli music and the dance music and lighter music of the more tonal and more impressionistic. But in the later years, this became integrated in that feeling of composing music which belongs to our time, but a bit also to our place. Mm. And this was a kind of tendency which became obvious to me all the time. I didn't have to think about it, actually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you wrote, Friedrich, wrote about meditations on drama in terms of style, in terms of connections to other composers. Would you like to say a few more words about it before we move to?
There are no citations. It's not that he goes into pieces of other composers. This is his very own voice, and he told just before about his meetings with Xenakis. He also is a very avant-garde composer of these years, and many other composers wouldn't understand what he was composing. No, it's not something he take over from other composers. But it's more when you listen to this cluster at the beginning of meditations. It's also the sound of a big city, maybe New York. Everything is sounding, comes together. And it's also dealing with the 12-tone method, 12-tone system. And there's so much from all this, so much elements are in this piece. Of course, what he said about this horn theme, this is very heavy in the piece, and it leads you back from avant-garde to very, very early times. It's what I told you. I have the feeling all the pieces of Tzvi are telling stories. And also this piece, it's not just a piece like, I don't know what should I say, but it's interesting. Interesting that it was performed in Germany in the Philharmonie. It was not very often that the Philharmoniker and also the Philharmonic Hall was presenting contemporary music. It was a church for Beethoven, for Mozart, for Brahms and Bruckner and all. And Schönberg was very rarely performed even in this hall, not in Berlin, in other places, but in it's like a a blessing for this piece.
Yeah, you're actually talking about, maybe let me put it in other words, you're talking about coherence. You're talking about a narrative of a piece, not a collection of new contemporary devices and techniques, but a narrative that goes through the whole piece. But I would like to go back to the story of your connection. So you actually chose Avni's piece for the prize, and it was accepted in 1999. And then your connection started. And then during the years, I think you aired some of his music. You broadcast in your work.
Yes.
So can you tell us about all of these years between 99, the prize, and 2018 or 17, when you decided to write the book about Avni?
I must say, I was not the radio. I was the head of the classic musical program, but we have an orchestra with a chief conductor, with a manager, and we had some producers. There was also another producer beside of me who was presenting a lot of contemporary music, Wolfgang Korb, and he also made interviews, and he was responsible for the Thursday evening where we presented or broadcasted contemporary music. And he often, or not often, but sometimes he broadcast pieces of Tzvi, and of course the orchestra decided to perform, to play, and musicians decided to play his music with other ensembles. So it was we didn't deal it every day, but from time to time there was a performance, from time to time there was a radio program, from time to time we had the possibility, opportunity to talk to him and to make a recording of the interviews and so on. Yeah, it was, and I think even I don't know, that we had a television department. I don't know how much was taken from you, Tzvi. Do you remember?
Yes. Once even the editor, the film editor Gabi Bollinger came here especially to interview me when I was told about the prize. She came and made an article about me, and of course it was a kind of full reportage before the prize. And something which I really would like also to remember and to mention, this was the commission that really Ronit mentioned now, that the Ship of Hours.
Exactly.
This was commissioned. This was a piece commissioned for the orchestra of Saarland by the initiative of Sabine Tomek, who was the director of the orchestra, I think, at that time. And as far as I remember, I was in Berlin, and she came even especially to Berlin to discuss with me that commission. It was a very important factor in my later works, and I think it was really the best performance that I had was with Michael Stern with the orchestra in Saarland. In Saarbrücken.
So if I ask just one more question about the Ship of the Hours, it's really one of the most important pieces, I think, of that time. That and This Is a Man, right? The Primo Levi piece. So these are the two pieces that are really important around the 2000, right? I think they were written in 1998 and 1999. Now, Ship of the Hours is, in a way, it might be conceived or might be explained as maybe biographical piece, because you have a movement that actually takes you back to your neighborhood in Haifa with the Arabs, right? And you have a piece that you have a movement that is based on I think it was Mordechai Ardon, a picture.
The four movements. It's actually, Ronit, it's actually a symphony, and it has four movements based on four famous paintings by Ardon, who was one of our greatest painters. Yeah. And we became friendly really in later years of his. And this really, as you say, it is a kind of covering various aspects of my musical thought and my life, actually. Yes, as you mentioned, I have that one movement is on the painting with Arab town. Yes, I lived in Haifa near to an Arab farm. Yes, and this was the woman who owned that farm was Hafifa, I remember, and we used to steal cactus, cactus fruits from her garden there.
Prickly pears, yeah.
And yes, and this movement, which I called after the picture of Ardon, but it's a part of my life. Yes, this is what I wanted to. And the same thing is his famous painting, "The Stones of the Ancient Wall." Of course, he means the wall of the temple. And it has something, I think, some elements of that also in my music there. So everything was connected somehow through his pictures to my own life and thinking and feeling.
Yeah. And I thought that this is how you chose the paintings to inspire your music. What do you think, Friedrich, about this piece and its connection? Because it was the Ship of the Hours was actually based on a commission, based on the prize that you helped Tzvi to receive, right?
Okay, the commission was to celebrate the 1,000 years of Saarbrücken. It was the celebration for 1,000 years of the city. And we understood, everyone in Saarbrücken understood this piece as something. He took us by the hand and said, "This is Jewish history. This is our it's also my story, of course." But what he said about the ancient wall, of course, everyone had the feeling that is the wall in Jerusalem, and you can hear the sounds of Haifa in this small village in the mountains. Now we all had this the feeling. This is, what I said. He took us by his hands. And I come from Saarbrücken, but I show you where I'm living now and which history came to Israel, and yeah, this was what we felt, but this was a piece of his own story.
It's very interesting what you tell us. And how did you,
I think,
yeah, please.
I think I can add something about that piece. The last movement is, according to Ardon's painting, the final dance. And you see a kind of clown, it may be also kind of scarecrow, you know, a kind of, he stands, this clown there, and he makes a movement like dancing, but it has something ironic, it has something questionable. And I had that feeling at that time already that we got away maybe from that Israeli naivety which we had before, and everything was with the horror and the simplicity and so on. And here it was a bit more, I think there is a bit of sarcasm in that movement. Yes, a bit of kind of irony, which was influenced by that, again, by the painting, but also according to that feeling that in those years already, that these were already the years that people started asking questions about Zionism, about what are we really. It has something of that also, I think, in the last movement.
Yeah.
The irony and the humor is a part of his work, I think. It's not so much discovered now, but I think it's so important for him. There is every time he is citating something, but what he told about the final and not the last dance.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And and of course here and in many other pieces. What I would say the European Geistesgeschichte, the history of the, or what is Geistesgeschichte, Tzvi?
You mean the Zeitgeist? Yes.
Yeah,
Zeitgeist. Speak about Zeitgeist. Or
no, the history of the intellectual development since the Middle Ages, but also the 19th
history
century.
Of the spirit, you mean?
Yeah, the spirit, and of course there is an Israel art, this Israel aspect of his music, a Jewish aspect, a very strong East European Jewish aspect, but there is also the West European culture, and not just the music, the music history, but also the philosophy and pieces of theater. What I say, I don't know what Geistesgeschichte. I must find it also what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, but I know
I would
maybe
like
you understand.
To ask about the transition between you recommending Tzvi Avni's pieces and broadcasting these pieces and things like that, and then you decide to write a book about Tzvi, and that's after you wrote about Nono and about Ligeti and about Kurtag. And what made you decide to write about Tzvi's music?
Very simple. The music spoke to me. All the pieces spoke to me, and I always have the feeling this music, the pieces are telling stories, and I don't know which stories he's telling. So I had the feeling there is some Middle East or Jewish elements, but not. It was not just on. He would put it on the table, but he's working on it behind the curtain. It's also a piece.
Yeah, which is also a title of a piece. So you're actually talking about a narrative that you can hear in many other pieces, that is really captivating, that is really emotive. And then you decide to write a book, right?
Yeah,
so can you tell us just a few minutes about your book, how it came about, and what are the focus, what is the focus of the book, and how did you balance the biographical part and the part about the certain pieces, and which pieces you chose to focus on? Just a few words.
Okay, one of the starting points was to find out more about his Saarbrücken origin, about what he got when he was a child, to tell the stories. The second was to he wrote his autobiography, so we didn't need another biography, but I wanted to write biography by looking more strongly on the works, on his compositions. This was the idea, because what I said, I had the feeling all these pieces are telling something, telling stories, telling about his ideas, about his his life, what he took over, and yeah, it's fantastic to go through the pieces. I must say, I made much more analysis of his music than I wrote in this book. It was a book also for all the people in Saarbrücken, that they have in addition to his autobiography, they have another way to come to meet him, to meet his music, and I wanted to make it readable.
Exactly, something which is accessible to the general audience of art lovers, right, and intellectuals. So you wanted to make it more, and then it's in German. We have only the biographies that we have right now are only in Hebrew. There is not so much, I guess. You can tell me, see, there is not so much in English about you, right? Other than the articles that you wrote about your music in English, right?
Yes. No, I don't remember anything special in English.
Yeah. Other than maybe the interview with Robert Fleischer?
No, there was the brochure that was published by the Israel Music Institute in English, yes.
And maybe the interview with Robert Fleischer, right? The book, what? Robert Fleischer's book.
Fleischer. Yes. Yeah, Robert Fleischer, he wrote a book. He was here in Israel and interviewed a number of composers, yeah, and published the book some 20 years ago. It's
actually 7 years ago. And yeah, he's
Fleischer. Of course, pardon?
Yeah.
But I must add that Friedrich Spangemacher, during the years, gave many introductions before concerts of my pieces, and he became really I would say the most knowledge person around my music, and it was also a great friendly gesture to meet him and to hear about what he thought about the music. And of course, I am very grateful for that. And another person which I would like to mention about my much more detailed knowledge about my childhood in Saarbrücken was Herbert Jochum. He went to the municipality, found my name. Little Hermann Jakob Steinke was born in September 2nd, 1927 in Saarbrücken. He found it in the papers of the municipality. And he found this school where my first school year there was in a French school, by the way, at that time. So I think the interest of these people, yes, was of course a great gift to me and a great important thing.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful also for the book, of course. I think it gives a good introduction to people in German about my music, because in my autobiography I didn't write very much about the music itself. I wrote about around things.
I think
So
this is
important.
our job. Other people should write about your music. This is our work right now, and this is what we're doing, right? I'm writing a chapter about you, and Spangemacher wrote a book, and maybe even expand this analysis, right? And now you're and what I'm so pleased about is your recent work, the String Quartet, with so much humor and so much. Maybe that would be our last topic for this discussion today. Talk about humor and actually zest and enthusiasm in your music, because you, Tzvi, actually refused to write late music. At your age, I'm so, I feel honored to interview you at your 94th year. And it was lovely to read your Hebrew poem about your age a few months ago. And when we corresponded,
should translate it into German.
When we corresponded a few days ago about your last string quartet that you wrote, I looked at it, and as a musicologist, I was maybe secretly expecting some sort of cerebral, philosophical late style, and no, it was not at all. And you told me later, you wrote me later, I refused to write late music. I refused to write older music. So if you can tell us just a few words about your new quartet, and maybe you, Friedrich, also. Yeah, please.
This quartet was written in a kind of seclusion because of the corona. I live now at the apartment of my wife, Dora, and I had a little, one of my ex-students brought me a little keyboard, electric keyboard. And, days passed and we did almost nothing, because you were not supposed to go out at the beginning. It was so strict, everything. So somehow I felt that on the one hand, it was a kind of anger also about what's happening. How are we going to live on? And we were so scared and worried. And on the other hand, I had, as you said, there are also some humoristic moments there. I thought everything can be also viewed from a kind of more relaxed angle. So I started writing this quartet, which was quite furious at the beginning, I think. And then you said it reminded you of summer strings, even in some way, which may be right.
That's what I wrote you, yeah.
But summer strings was
like closing the circle, and we're talking about pieces that were written 60 years apart, right? Summer strings about 62, and now 2022, 2021, you wrote the quartet. Yeah.
Yes, almost 60 years, yes. So if you can still recognize the same person or the same kind of inner line in the life of somebody after 60 years, it means something, of course.
Definitely. And what did you think, Friedrich, when you saw this recent piece?
I haven't studied this piece very carefully, but I must say it's not just a piece of pleasure. There is, I have the feeling maybe it's written like with a pleasure and anger, what he said, but there are some interesting work with a fugue. Fugue sections, and also the strict rhythm throughout the whole piece. It's not a a piece for dancing. It's a piece. Piece. It looks, for me, I have a feeling it looks into his inner life. And when he said I remembered Summer Strings. Of course, yeah, I can see it, that there is, and it's fantastic that you make this big bow from your early years of a composer to now. Fantastic. I'm trying to find a performance in summer.
Wow.
I cannot tell if I'm not fixed, but maybe we work on it. That we have in German performance this year.
Wonderful. So we can think about, maybe even hearing it live. That would be wonderful. Yeah. Maybe in the summer, you say. Well, thank you so much. Yeah.
If the corona lets us to keep on our life, I may withdraw, maybe even come for a performance if it happens there in Saarbrücken.
Wonderful. You actually did get many performances over the last year in Germany, right? Not one and not two. You sent us an email with a list of performances during the last year in Germany, right? Quite a lot.
Yes, it was a special year. Maybe Friedrich cannot tell you more about that, about the Jewish special situation in Germany, about Jewish life in Germany. 1700 years actually is now the kind of anniversary.
Yeah.
This was last year, and they continue it because there was Corona, and they continue it in this year. We had some performances. It was a pity that he couldn't attend these performances, but I hope he can come.
I do.
In a near future to Saarbrücken, and we will take care and we offer. And I know that the new mayor is in the meantime also a friend of yours, and
Yes.
I often heard him that he talked about you to other people, that we have a big composer here in Saarbrücken. He's now living in Tel Aviv, but it's good to hear.
Wonderful. Great news. And we're really looking forward to the performance of your new quartet that you wrote during the Corona time. Thank you so much, Friedrich. Thank you so much, Tzvi. And thank you. And we will continue our talk, right?